All right, your interim standards and practices for property purchase before May 31st, 1977, with the respective property purchase before May 31st, 1997, make a determination for the respective defendant described in Clause 1 shall take into account any specialized knowledge experience of the person part of the defendant with the relationship with the purchase, private the value with the property was not contaminated, commonly known with the responsibly searching information about the property with the obviousness of the presence of the likely presence of contamination with the property ability of the defendant to detect the contamination with contamination by appropriate inspection. All right, your purchased property purchased after May 31st, 1997, with respect to the property purchased after May 31st. 1997 until the administrator promulgated the regulation described in Section 2, Clause 2 of the Procedure of the American Society Testing Materials, including the documentation standard E1527 97 entitled the standard practice of environmental site assessment, part of phase 1 environmental site assessment process satisfied with the requirement in Clause 1. Site inspection entitled Earth. In the case of the property, residential, even the other similar purchase of the non-governmental, non-commercial entity, the facility inspection title, search of the arrival of the non-base further investigation shall consider the satisfied subgraph. All right, nothing in this paragraph, section 107B3, shall diminish the liability of the presence of the owner operator of the facility who otherwise the liability of the act with the notwithstanding with the paragraph the defendant obtained actual knowledge or relief, threatened relief of the head substance such with the facility the dependent with the own within real property with the subsequently transferred ownership of the property and other person without disclosing such for the knowledge of the defendant shall be treated liable under section 107A. No offense under section 107B, but it should be available to such for the defendant. Nothing in the end. The paragraph shall fifth liability after the defendant of the who's and any of the act of the mission of the cause that contributed with the relief, the threat and release of the hazardous substance which is subject to action in relation with the facility. The term Indian tribe means for the Indian tribe nation with the organized group of the community, include with the Alaska Native Village, but not include with the Alaska Native Regional and Village Corporation. The recognized with the eligible for special program services provided by the United States are to Indians because of the term and the staff of the Indians. The term service station of the dealer means any of the person of the owner or the operator of the motor vehicle service station, fill station, garage, or similar related retail establishment engaged with the building and buying, selling, and repairing services of motor vehicle for the significant percentage of the gross revenue established is derived from the fueling and repairing servicing of the motor vehicles. Whose up the collection, accumulation, delivery of the oil recycling facility recycled the oil has been removed from the engine, light duty of the motor vehicle or household appliances by owners such the vehicle for the applying for the presented with such owner with such for the person calculation, collection, accumulation, delivery of the oil recycling. For the purpose of the section 114 to determine the service station, the dealer shall not withstand the provisions subparagraph they include any of the government agencies established for the purpose and accepting recycled oil satisfied on the criteria such for set forth in clause 1-2 and then subparagraph A2 with respect to the recycled oil satisfied with the criteria set forth in subclauses 1 and 2 of the owner and operative of the refuse collection service will compel both the state level and collect accumulated delivered such for the oil with the oil recycling facilities. The President shall promulgate with the regulation regarding the determination of consistency with the significant with the percent of the gross revenue establishment purchase of the paragraph of the term incineration vessel means any vessel carry with the hazardous substance for the purpose of incineration such substances along with the substance and residual substances are on board. Brownfield site in general, the term brownfield site meaning real property expensive redevelopment, the reef of which with the complicated with the presence of the potential presence of the hazardous substance pollutant with the contamination. Exclusion of the term brownfield site does not include the facility with the subject of the plan with the ongoing removal of the action of this title. Facility listed in the national priority list of the proposed priority list of the facility subject to unilateral administrative and court order and administrative the orders of consent with the judicial consent of the decree that has been issued and with the parties under this paragraph. Or if the facility is subject to the unilateral administrative order of the court order administrative the order of the consent with the judicial consent to the decree that has been issued within the parties facility with which the permit was issued for the United States, the authorized state of the Solid Waste Disposal Act of the Federal Water Pollutant Control Act and the Toxic Substance Control Act or the Safe Drinking Water Act. The facility is subject to the corrective action under the Section 3004 U and 3008 H of the Solid Waste Disposal Act, and to be which the corrective action permanent order has been issued modified to require the implementation of corrective measures and land disposal unit with respect to the closure notification under Act of Title C with the Solid Waste Disposal Act has been submitted with the closure requirements have been specified with the closure plan and permit. The facility is subject to the jurisdiction, custody, with the control of the Department, agency, and instrumentality of the United States, except for the land held within the United States, with the Indian tribe portion of the facility, at which there has been a relief of the polychlorinated bioethanols with the subject of the remediation under the Toxic Substance Control Act, or a portion facility with a portion of substance of the response activity has been operated within Subtitle 1 of the Solid Waste Disposal Act for the Leaking Under Storage Act. The Tank Trust Fund established under Section 95,508 with Internal Revenue Code 1986 site by site. Determination notwithstanding the subparagraph the site by site base of the President may authorize financial assistance for the intersection 104K2 with the any eligible site including the 1456 8 and 9 of the subparagraph B with the president found with the financial assistance to protect the human health of the environment with either prompt economic development enable the creation of the preservation additional park with the greenways undeveloped property with the recreational property of the property with the non-proper purpose of the additional area with the purpose of the section with the term of the brownfield site included within the site with the meet with the definition of brown site under the paragraphs A and C with the contaminated with the control substance with the section defined section 102 of the Controlled Act as contaminated with the petroleum product excluded with the definition have substance within section 101. If the site have there is no reasonable part of the determined administrator of the state with the property about to be in with the be assessed, investigated, cleaned up by the person but not potentially liable for cleanup of the site. But under this act, any other law permitting cleanup of the petroleum products is not subject to any of the order under section 9003H for the Solid Waste Disposal Act or the Mines Carried Land. Bonafide prospective purchases. In general, the bonafide prospective purchaser is made with the respect of the facility of the person who acquires the ownership of the facility on January 11, 2002, establishes preponderance environment evidence of the criteria in section 1 through 8 of the subparagraph B, and the person who acquired the leasehold of the interest for the facility on January 11, 2002, to establish the preponderance of the evidence of the leasehold of the interest for the decided 9 to avoid liability after any of the person with respect to whom the following conditions apply: the owner of the facility with the subject with the leasehold interest of the person described in clause 1 with the owner in the facility with the subject with the leasehold in which was the person described in the clause at the time of the leasehold interest acquired with the no longer with the top preponderance of the evidence for each of the criteria described in 1 through 8 with the subparagraph E due to the circumstances unrelated by the action of the person who holds the leasehold interest, any of the person who holds the leasehold interest established preponderance of evidence of the criteria described in the clauses 1, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8 of the subparagraph B, but the person who holds the leasehold interest established preponderance of the evidence of the criteria described in clauses 1 through 8 with the subparagraph B, with the criteria described in the subparagraph as follows: the disposal of the prior acquisition, all disposal of the of the facility acquired from the person who is interested in the person inquired with the person also appropriately inquires previously the ownership of the facility in accordance with the general use of the good commercial customary standards and practice in accordance with the subparagraph clauses 2 and 3, standard for the practice referred in clause 2 and the 4 over the paragraph 35B, shall be considered the safety requirements of the clause of the residential case for the case of the property with the residential or similar use at the time of the purchase for the non-governmental non-commercial entity facility inspection title search reveal of the non-base of the further investigation should be considered satisfied with the requirements of the clause. Notice the person provided all the legally required notice with respect to the discovery of the relief they have of the substance facility with the care of the person actually with the appropriate care with respect to the hazards found with the facility with the take of the responsible step to stop any of the continuing release, prevent threat and future relief to prevent and limited human, environmental, and natural resource exposure to any previously released hazardous substance, corrosion, cooperation assistance with the assets. The person with the provide the full cooperation of the citizens for the access of the person with the authorized to cover the response action natural resource restoration vessels will include the cooperation and access of the necessary installation, integrity, operation, maintenance for the aim of the complete partial response action for the natural resource restoration of the vessel facility. Institutional control of the praying for the person complying with the land of the restrictions established rely with the connection with the responsible action of the vessel facility does not impede with the effectiveness and integrity with the institutional control and employed with the vessel facility with the connection with the response action. Response subpoena with the person comply with the request for the information administered with the subpoena the issue with the president under the act. No affiliation with the person means of the potential liability affiliated with any of the other person potential liability with the response of the cup through any indirect financial familia relationship with any contractual corporate financial relationship with other contractual corporate with a financial relationship with the created with the instrument with which with the type of the facility with the convey with the finance of tenancy with the instrumental with the leasehold and the interest of the facility is created by a contract for the sale of the goods and services as the result of the reorganization of the business entity with a potential liable eligible response site within the general the term eligible response site mean with the site with the definition of the Brown State with the paragraphs A and B with the paragraph 39 with the modified and paragraphs B and C with this paragraph. Inclusion of the term inclusion eligible response site included now saying the 39B time with the paragraph with the portion of the system of the response activity that has been obtained with the subtitle 1 Solid Waste Disposal Act from leaking underground storage tank truck with the subsequent section 95,008 9,508 with the Internal Revenue Code 1986 with the site with the notwithstanding with the inclusion provided in some paragraph C with the paragraph 39B with the president determined the time side by side with the rate for the consolidation state with the limitation with the enforcement of section 128 with the site specification clause of 4, 5, 6, and 8 with the paragraph of the 39B would be appropriate and will protect with the human health of the environment with the promote with the economic development and civil with the creation of the preservation addition with the park with the greenway undeveloped with the property with the recreational property with the property with the non-profit for purpose of the exclusion term eligible response by the design include the facility with the which the president conduct with the preliminary assessment of the site inspection after consultation with the state with the term determining the site of the obtained with the preliminary sufficient with the possible listing with a national priority live at the site of otherwise qualifying list with a national priority list of the unless the president has determination that no federal action will be taken, or facility of the president determine the warrant with a particular court and consideration of the regulation with on-site with the closing with the sole source of the drinking water aquifer sense of the ecosystem. Alright, report quantable additional designation, section 102 of the administrative shall promulgate the revived the main appropriate regulation. The designation hazardous substance in addition with those referred in 101.14 of the elements for the compound mixture solution and substances which will be when relief of the environmental may present with substantial danger for the public health, the welfare, environment, shall promulgate the regulations establishing compliance with the hazardous substance of the release, which shall be reported pursuant to section 107, section 103 of the tablet administrative determination of a single quantity with reportable quantity before any hazardous substance regardless of the medium in which for the hazardous substance relief, if they're all hazardous substances for both the regulation establishing reportable quantity with the published for the federal regulation under the section subsection before March 1st, 1986, but the administrator shall promulgate the under subsection with the final regulation establishing reportable quantity no later than December for the 31st, 1986, but that has substance of the pro of the regulation establishing portable quantity that was not published in the Federal Register and subsection of them before March 1st, 1986, but the administrator shall publish for the under subsection proposed with the regulation establishing reportable quantity no later than December 31st, 1986, promulgating final regulation under the subsection establishing reportable quantities no later than April 30th, 1988. On life of the superintendent of the regulation establishing reportable quantity under subsection A of this section A, that is within the defined section 114 with the title of 1 for the quantity with the 1 pound 2 with the half of the substance for the reportable quantity to have the substance pursuant to section 311 B4 with the Federal Water Pollutant Control Act. This is a reportable quantity deemed with the quantity of the relief of the which required the notification pursuant to section 103 B A and B of the title. Notice and penalty section 103 with any of the person in charge of the vessel, the offshore or onshore facility with the assumed with the knowledge and with the relief of any other federal permanent relief that hazardous substance from which side of the vessel facility with the quantities equal to greater than those determined pursuant to Section 102, title immediately notify the National Response Center established with the Clean Water Act of the Start for the least National Response Center for the conveying with the notifications expeditiously appropriate with the government agency, including the governor and any affected state. Any person in charge of the vessel for the hazardous substance relief, the federal permanent relief, into and then above with the into and upon with the navigable water of the United States that join with the shorelines upon with the water of the contingency zone. Or two in charge of the vessel that has substance relief of the federal permit of the relief of the which for the may affect with the natural resource belong with the important to the or under the exclusive management authority of the United States, including the Marine for the Fishery Conservation Management Act of 1976. Who is otherwise subject with the jurisdiction of the United States for the timely release, or three in charge of the facility that has substance relief of the federal permanent relief, the quantity equal to greater than the determined pursuant to section 102 with the fail to notify the immediate appropriate agency of the United States government having knowledge of the stuff, the relief, the submit for the notification information he know of the fault for the misleading, which shall upon the conviction be fined according with the applicable provision in Title 18 of the United States Code, in prison not more than 3 years, no more than 5 years in the case of the second and subsequent convictions, both over the notification received with the pursuant of the subsection information obtained with the exploitation of the subsection notification shall be not be used against the submission of the criminal case except for the prosecution perjury given in any false statement. Within 180 days after the enactment of the act for the person who would operate at the time of the disposal owned with the operative with the except for the hazardous substance transferred to select with the facility that hazardous substance defined in section 101.14c and over the side of the act have been such assured and treated the disposal shall unless the such facility of the permanent issue has in accordance with the status under the subpart Title C of the solid waste disposal act administrative environmental and protected agency with the existence of such facility specifying the amount of the title that has of the substance to be found there and any of known suspected likely relief of such substance if the such facility the administrator may prescribe the greater deal of the man with the force of the notice of the information. The administrator shall notify the affected state agency of the department that designated with the governor to perceive with each such with the existence of such facility and person with the knowingly fails to notify the administrator existence of any of the such facility upon conviction be fined no more than $10,000 and or imprisonment no more than 1 year for both in addition with the other such person knowingly fails to provide notified notice required with the subsection entitled with the limitation of liability of the act and any of the defense liability set within section 107 of this act provided however the notification under the subsection of the required with the name of the facility would be reportable here under as a result of the stoppage of transit with the temporary with the incidental transportation moving the ordinary operating conveyance with the common with the contractor care of the such stoppage consider with the continuity of movement of the not in storage has the stuff the notification received with the pursuant subsection information obtained with the explanation of the such notification not to be used against the such person in the criminal case any of the criminal case except prosecution perjury and given with a false statement. Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency authorized promulgate the rules regulations specifying with the respect of the location, title of the condition, facility, identified with the characteristic quantity with the original condition, with including with the containerization, prioritized treatment, any of the hazardous substance contained with the disposed in the facility has a substance for the and the record should be retained by any of the person required with the with notification facilities of the paragraph C of section of the such specification in accordance with the provision of subsection beginning with the date of the enactment of 50 years thereafter, for 50 years after the date of the establishment of the record, whichever the labor the any such the earlier time of the verse obtained within paragraph 3 of the subsection shall be unlawfully any of the person known to destroy, mutilate, with a race to dispose of, the conceal, otherwise render unavailable, unreadable, that is falsify a record of the identified in paragraph 1 of the subsection in person violate for the paragraph shall upon the provision of the be acquired in accordance with the applicable provision title 18 U.S. Code of the imprisonment not more than 3 years, but no more than 5 years in the states of the second and subsection of the convention conviction, or both, any time of the prior to the day of the which occurred with the 50 years after the day of the enactment of the name of the person identified in paragraph 1 of the subsection may apply with the Administrator of the Environmental Agency for the waiver of the provision of the first sentence of the paragraph 2 of the subsection. Administratively authorized to grant such a waiver the discretion and for the waiver but not be unreasonably interfere with the attainment of the purpose of the provisions of the act of the administrator shall promptly give the rules regulation regarding such a waiver the way the informed party for the proper application proceeds the condition approval of the such waiver, notwithstanding the provision subsection of the Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency may the discretion required by the selfless person and with the retained with the record identified with the pursuant in paragraph 1 subsection of the time of the period with the excess of the period specified in paragraph 2 of the subsection administrator determined to be necessary to protect the public health and welfare applicable registered pesticide product for the emissions in animal waste farms. In general, this section shall not apply the additional application of pesticide production with the federal insecticide, fungicides, and rodenticide, and handling storage of the stuff of the pesticide producing product for the agricultural procedures, the air emission for the animal waste, including decomposition animal waste is farm. Definition of the subsection animal waste and the term animal waste beneath the feces, urine, other excrement, digestive emission of the oil series similar substances emitted with the animals, and including any of the farm livestock, poultry, and fish, included the term of the animal waste, including the animal waste with the animal waste with mixed with a commingling, bedding, compost, feed, soil, and any other material typically found in such a waste of the farm. The term farm means the site of the area, including associated that is used for the production of the crop, of the raising, and the selling of the animals, including the form of the livestock, poultry, and fish. The under normal condition of the producer produced during the farm year with the agricultural product for the total value with the equal not less than 1,000. There are no notification required in subsection A of the section relief that has substance which is required with the reported specifically accepted from the form of the reporting subpart C with the solid waste disposal act, the regulation there under which has some reported national response time with the continuous relief to take quantibility rate. At which of the facility with the notification have to give it under subsection C with the section relief the notification have to give it under subsection A and B with the section of the period sufficient for establishing the quantity of control, continuity, quality, and regulatory such release. Alright, provide the notification according to the subsection A with the B and with the paragraph shall be given the release to subject with the paragraph annually such time with the satisfactory statistically significantly increase the quantity with the any of the head substance constitute thereof of the release and above the previously reported occurring. Section 104 response authorities. A1 whenever A have the substance for the relief of the substantial for the rest of such relief. Relief of the environmental, B, with the relief of the substantial threat of the release of environmental pollutant contamination, which may present imminent substantial damage of the public health, the welfare, present and authorized to act with the consistent with the national contingency plan to remove the range of the removal of the provide with remedial action relief of such hazards with the substance pollutant contaminant active in any time, including in the removal of the any contaminated natural resource. Taking any of the response measure consistent with the national contingency plan with the president deemed necessary to protect the public health, the welfare, environment. The president determines if the such for the accident done promptly with the owner and the operator with the facility of the vessel may be any other reasonable party. The president may allow such person to carry out the action, conduct the remedial investigation, conduct the feasible study, and then according with the section 122, but not remedial investigation with the study of the according with the 122. Non-remedial investigation feasibility study authorized except for the determination of the president with the party with the qualified with the remedial investigation feasible study only with the president contract for the ranging with the qualified person with the assistant president overseeing with the reviewing and conducting remedial investigation and feasible study with the responsible parties agree with the reimburse of the funds for the man incurred any costs incurred with the president under the or in connection with the oversight of the contract agreement in the event with the potential for the responsible parties subject to lesser standards and liable receiving the preferential treatment in any other way with a directly and indirect benefit of the arrangement, the response of the contract and response action with the contractor person, however, the retained with the response action contractor with respect with the release of the facility, and the question the president shall give them primary attention to the relief of the president deemed made with the representative of the public health and treatment. Removal action undertaken by the president of the subsection any with the other person referred to in section 122 should have the consent of the president deems of the practical the contributive the efficient performance of any long-term remedial action in respect with the relief of the threat and relief the concern limitation responsible the president shall not provide with the removal of the remedial action under the section responsible for the relief of the threat relief of the natural occurring substance alteredly solely with the natural occurring process for the phenomenal location of the natural found from the product of the part of the structure of any of the result of the exposure of the residential buildings and of the community structures, and C, in public and private, the drinking water supply due to the deterioration of the system through ordinary use. Exemption of the limitation notwithstanding paragraph 3 of the subsection of the extent of the author of the section of the person may respond to any of the relief of the threat, relief of the present discretion, constitute of the public health of the environment, of the emergency of any other person with the authority with the capability to respond to the emergency will do so in a timely manner. Information cited of the investigation, wherever the president is authorized pursuant to subsection A of this section, with whenever the president have the reason to believe that the relief that has occurred, about to occur with the illnesses, disease, and compliance thereof, the attributed exposure, habits, and substance pollutant with contamination with the release may have occurred by occurring the undertaking of the investigation, monitoring, survey, testing, other information gathering may be necessary or appropriate to identify the existing extent of the relief thereof, than the source of the nature of the hazardous substance pollutant and contaminants involved, the extent of the danger publicly over the welfare, environmental, condition with the president may undertake the steps for the planning, official, economic, engineering, architectural, and other study of the investigation then he may deem necessary for the appropriate plan with a directly responsive action to recover the cost of the enforce of the provision for this act. Coordinated investigation president shall promptly, with appropriate federal statement of the natural resource of the trustee, shift present damage of the natural resource result in relief under the investigation under the section, and shall seek the to coordinate with the assessment and investigation planning under the section of the federal, state, and trustee for the unless the A with the president find with the continued response action with immediately required with the prevent, limited, and mitigate the emergency. There is an immediate risk for the public health and welfare of the environment, such position not otherwise provided with a timely basis. The president has determined appropriate remedial action on presumably paragraph 2 of the subsection state in the states in which the source of the release has located with the comply with the requirements of paragraph 3 and subsection C. Continued response otherwise appropriately consistent with the remedial action to be taken with the obligation of the fund on the authorized subsection B, with the section should not continue after $2 million has been obligated with the response action in 12 months of the lapse from the date of the initial response of the release and threat and relief of the hazardous substance. President consult with the affected state of the state before determining the appropriate remedial action to be pursued with the authority guaranteed in subsection A of this section. The president shall not provide any remedial actions pursuant to this section unless the date of the release occur with the first of the end of the contract with the cooperative agreement with the president to provide insurance of the deemed adequate for the president and the A the remedial action with A with the state with the with the future of the maintenance and removal of remedial action provided with the expected life of the trust action determined by the president with the B the state with the will assure with the believe that hazard waste disposal act for the stuff of the president will comply with the requirements of part C with the solid waste disposal act for the necessary officer storage destruction treatment any sort for the secure the disposition of hazardous substance. C with the state will pay with the insurance payment of the 10% stadium of the cost of the remedial action, including all the future maintenance with the 50% of the grave of the president may determine the appropriate taking into account with the degree of the responsibility of the state public subdivision for the release and of the sums of exposure and the responsibility for the release of the facility with the operating with the structural and political subdivision thereof, either directly through a contractual relationship or otherwise at the time of the aim of the disposal hazards and the area and the purpose of the two for the subparagraph of the concern of the facility does not include the navigable waters of the beds underlying these waters. The president shall grant with the state with the credit with the share of the cost with the responsible under the paragraph of the aim of the documented direct out of pocket with the fund for the non-federal funds expended and obligated with the state and public subdivisions thereof the January 1st, 1978, before the date of the enactment of the cost eligible the response action claim for the damage compensable under 11.1 over the title of the relating of the specifically relief of the question, provided however that no event of the amount of the credit granted exceed total response costs relating to the release and the case of the remedial action had to be taken on land water of the Indian tribe by the United States of the trust and for Indians and by a member of the Indian tribe such a land was subject to the trust restriction and alienation otherwise by the board of the Indian reservation. Requirements of the paragraph or assurances regarding the future maintenance of the cost sharing with the not apply with the president shall provide the assurance required with the paragraph according to the availability of the hazard waste disposal site facility. Selection of the remedial action. The president shall select the remedial action to carry over the section in accordance with the section 121 of this acting related with the cleanup stand state with the credit. Grants of the credit with the president of the shall grant with the credit state with the credit again for the share of the capital with the responsible for the paragraph 3 with the respective facility listed in the national priority list of the national contingency plan for the amounts expended by the state of the remedial action for the facility pursuant to the contract water agreement. The president of the credit under the paragraph shall be limited to the state expense of the president determined responsible for documented direct out-of-pocket expenditure of non-federal funds. Expenses before listing agreement. The credit under the paragraph shall include the expense of the remedial action of the facility inquired before listing of the facility with the national priority list down before the contract water agreement entered under the subsection D of the facility. If then after such expense of the cleared facility listed on such a facility list of the contract cooperative agreement entered in the facility, and if the president determined that the expense of the wood would have the credit for the state within the paragraph the expenditures being made with the listing of the facility on such a list after the date of which of the contract cooperative agreement is entered response actions between 1978 and 1980. The credit under the disposal shall include the funds to the expect with the obligate with the state and public subdivision thereof of the January 1st, 1978 and before December 11th, 1980. But the cost eligible the response action claim for the damage encompassable under Section 111. The state expense for the after the December 11th, 1980, within 6% of the 10% of the cost credible under the paragraph of the shall include the 9% of the state of the expense of the incurred of the facility owned with the not operative of the trust for the state of the public subdivision and state such credits apply with the only the expenditure of the pursuant the contract cooperative agreement under subsection D with the only expense for the incurred for the December 11th, 1980 before the day of the enactment of the paragraph, item to item approval. In the case of the expenditure made with the date with the enactment of the paragraph of the president may require an approval of each of the item of expenditure for the SU for the condition granting under the paragraph the U for the credits granted under the paragraph of the fund with respect to the facility may be the U for the state with the reduce all the words to share cost of the otherwise as required with the payment of the state on paragraph 3 with the connection with the remedial action of such so for the amount of the funds with which with credit allowed with the paragraph of the exceed with the share with the cost of such facility with the state with the may use the amount with the such for the exit to reduce all of the part of the share such cost of the facility and state aid with the credit shall not be entitled with the state with the direct payment. Operation of the maintenance. So, for the purpose of the paragraph 3 of the subsection in the cave of the ground, surface of the well with the contamination from completed remedial action, include with the completion of the treatment of the measures which were taken on-site and off-site with the necessary with the restore of the ground and surface water with the quality of the level, assure with the protection of the human health environment with respect to such member of the operation of such measures a period up to 10 years for the construction and installation with the commencement of the operation shall continue remedial action activity required for the maintaining the effectiveness of such a measure with the following with the period with the completion of the remedial action which was easier is earlier and should be considered the operation maintenance. Limitation source of the fund for the operation of maintenance. During any of the period of the availability fund for the received of the hazardous substance super fund with the establishment of subparagraph chapter A of chapter 98 with the internal revenue code of 1954 with the tax revenue for the property and with the general revenue of the new federal share of the payment of the cost of the operation maintenance pursuant to paragraph 3C1 or paragraph 6 of the subsection relating to the operation maintenance shall be funded with the receipt of the hazardous substance super fund with the amount of the recovered on the behalf of under the action. Recontract the president is authorized to undertake continue whatever within term of the remedial action with the president determine the appropriate review for the risk of the public health environment with the performance of the committee complete with the remedial action and the required for the recontracting because of the discovery of the type of the quantity that has something that's not known at the time of the entry with the intake into the original contract with the total cost of the interim action with the the facility pursuing the paragraph that shall not exceed $2 million citing. Effective 3 years after the enacting of the Superfund Amendment of the Reauthorization Act of 1986, the President shall not provide the remedial action pursuant to the section on the life of the state with which relief of the curve of the first end to the contract of the cooperative agreement with the President providing assurance of the deem of the coadequate with the President will the state and that the state will surely be able to have the waste treatment and disposal facility have the adequate capacity for destruction treatment the secure for the deposit the disposition of the hazard waste for the reasonably expect for the regenerated standard state during 20-year period following the date of the contract cooperative agreement with the disposal of the tree and destroy with the state, with the outside of the state, and the corn with the interstate, with the regional agreement with the authority, with the are acceptable with the president and compliant with the requirements of subpart Title C with the solid waste disposal act, cooperative agreements, state applications, state political subdivision thereof of the Indian tribe may apply with the president with the care of the actions of the within section president determines with the state and public subdivision Indian tribe are capable of to carry out any of the all such for the according with the criteria with the priorities established pursuant to section 105 AD with the carry out the late enforcement action with the president may enter with the contract of cooperative agreement of the state with the public subdivision Indian tribe to carry out such action. The president shall determine regarding the action for the compliance application in 90 days after the president receives the application. Terms and conditions contract cooperative agreement under the paragraph shall be held with the such for the terms and conditions the president may prescribe the contract of the cooperative agreement may also cover the specific facility the specific facility reimbursement any state with expense with the fund with the during the prior beginning with the January September 30. 1985 with the ending with the day with the enactment of subparagraph of the response of the action to any site with the include with the national priority list subject to the cooperative agreement under the section that shall be reimbursed and share cost of the selection action with federal government in response under this action. However, the President acts enter the cost sharing agreement with the pursuant subsection C with the subsection with this section contract with the cooperative agreement with the presumed the subsection with the state and political subdivision they are failed to comply with the requirements of the contract with the President may after the providing 60 days with notice. C. Appropriate federal district court to enforce the contract with the recover the any of the funds of any of the costs incurred because of the breach of the contract with the state and public subdivision. When the state and public subdivision there is acting on the behalf of the President is authorized to provide technical legal assistance, administrative enforcement acting any of the contract subcontracting in connection with the response action with the any as assisted with the under the type of the intervening with the civil action involved with the enforcement of such contract subcontracting. The two more non-continuous facilities responsible with the base of the geographically base of the threat or the potential threat of the public health welfare environment the President may have in his discretion take threat the related facility and one of the purpose of the section information gathering access action authorized by an officer employee with the representative of the President the duly designated by the President authorized to take into account within paragraph 2 and 3 and 4 of any of the combination vessel facility establishment of the property location, given the paragraph 3 and 4 of the vessel facility establishing place the property location J from the vessel facility with the establishment of the plane of the place of the property located referred to in subparagraph 3 and 4 with any individually designated officer employed with a representative of the state and public subdivision under contract or cooperative agreement under subsection D1 of the authorized to take with such action authority with the paragraph 3 and 4 may exercise only if there is reasonable basis to believe that there may be a relief of the threat, relief of the hazardous and pollutant and contamination authority with the subsection may be exercised for the purpose of determining the need for the response to closing the taking the response action under the title and otherwise enforcing provision of the title. Access to information officer employed with a representative of the described paragraph 1 required of the person who may have the information relevant to any of the following furnished up upon release of the notes, information and documentation relating to such matter. Identification, nature, quantity of the materials which have been and are generated the treated and stored and disposed of the vessel facility, transported by the vessel facility, or the vessel or facility, nature for the exam of the release of the threat and relief of the hazardous substance contamination from a vessel or facility, information retaining the ability to pay for the person of the form of the cleanup, and in addition with the upon response to the note of the each of the person over the shall be grave for the aim of such for the officer employee representing access for the reasonable time in the vessel facility establishment, play for the property location, and inspection copy of the documents recording relating to such matter. The 32 shall comply with the furnishing by the officer employed with the representative of such documents record with the option of expense for the such operation, entry with the officer employed with the representative described in paragraph 1 authorized to enter for the reasonable times any as follows. Any vessel facility establishing the other play for the property has the substance pollutant with the contamination may have been generated, stored, disposed of from, and transported from any vessel facility establishing other property with the which for the hazardous substance pollutant contamination has been may have been release the vessel with the facility establishment, other plea for the property, ship for the release there may be threatened. Vessel facility establishment, other plea for the property with the entry with the may needed to determine the need. Remember the response appropriately respond with the back, effectuate and the response action with the title inspection sample the authority of the officer employed with the representative described and pick up with the one authorized to inspect the obtain the sample from a vessel facility establishment any other place for the property referred to in paragraph 3 from the aim of the location with the selected hazardous substance for the pollutant or contaminant and with the aim such for the officer employed with the representative authorized to inspect the obtain the sample of the name with the standard labeling of the subject hazardous substance pollutant contamination each of the such for the inspection should be complete with the responsible promptness samples. Officer employed with the representative obtained with the sample before leaving the premises of the show would give the owner an operator 10 with the other person with the job of the place of the sample of the word, but they obtained with the plan, received the describing the sample obtained with after the requested for the portion of the each of the sample to comply with the required result of the analysis made with each of the made of the such the furnished properly with the owner and operator tenant, other person in charge of the such person located with compliance, or is issuing the consent with the non-granted regarding the request of the officer employed with the representative in the paragraph 2, 3, and 4 of the president may issue the order directing compliance with the request of the order may be issued for the notice of opportunity with the consultation responsible under the circumstances. Complying with the president may ask for the attorney general with the comments for the civil action comply with the compliance with the request they offer the report within subparagraph A with the responsible believe that there is a relief of the threat with the relief of the hazardous substance the court shall take the following actions. In the case of the interfering with the entry with the inspection of the court shall enjoy the interfering with the direct with the compliance which orders prohibit the interfering with the entry with the inspection unless the other circumstances within case of the demand with the entry with the inspection attributed with the capricious abuse of the discretion and other which lies in accordance with law. In the case of information documentation required the orders and the court shall make enjoin interference with the information in the document request of the order direct compliance with the request of orders with the provide with the information documents unless under circumstances of the case of the demand for the information documentation arbitrator with the capacity of abuse of discretion otherwise not in accordance with the law. The court may accept the civil penalty $25,000 each day of non-compliance against the aim of the person unreasonable to fail to comply with the provision paragraph 2, 3, and 4 of the order issued in pursuant to some paragraph A of the paragraph. Order of the authority. Other authority. Notice that the subsection shall take over the president of the insuring the accident of obtaining the information over any lawful other information. Confidential information. Any record of the report information obtained with the person over the subsection, including the reports report with the records report with the information obtained with the representative of the president shall be available to the public over the except if upon showing the satisfaction of the president of the state whether the case may be aimed with the person record of the reports the information particularly part of thereof that they own their health safety effective data with the president of the state within case of any of the officers employed with the representative that has access to the section with the public would divulge the information entitled with the protection of section 1905 of the Title 18 United States Code. Such information, in particular with a portion of their should be considered confidential in accordance with the purpose of the section, except as such for the record. Documentation information may be discussed, and the other officers employ the authorized representative of the United States concerned with the carrying out of the action when relevant preceding the action. Any person not subject to the provision of Section 1905 of Title 18 of the United States Code, but knowingly, willingly devolve the disclosure of the information, Title of the protection over the subsection shall be subject for the fine not more than $5,000 imprisonment not exceeding 1 year, both. In submitting the data of the act, the person required to provide the date of the May and designate the date of which the person believed in the protection of the subsection 2 for the submit for the designated data, but separately with the other data submitted at the end of this act. A designation of the paragraph shall be provided with the written such a manner that the President may prescribe the regulation. Notwithstanding any limitation contained within section any other provision of law, for the information reported by the otherwise by the President, with the representative of the President under the law acts shall be available upon the written request of the duly authorized committee with the Congress to such committee. Alright, no person required to provide information over this act may claim the information entitled the protection under the paragraph shall, unless such person show for the following. Such person has not disclosed the information any of the person other than a member of the local emergency plan committee established in Title 3 of the Amendment of the Reauthorization Act of 1986 for the office of employee of the United States and local government with the employee with any such person, and the person who has bound with a confidential agreement with such person with the taking the responsible measures to protect the confidentiality such person but continue to take such measures. Information not recorded, disclosed, but otherwise made available to the public under any other federal state law. Disclosure information likely to cover the substantial harm of the competitive position of such person, specifically chemical identity, the self of the provider and protected but not readily discovered through the reverse engineering. Following information respect the hazards of the facility of the vessels do not be entitled the protection of the paragraph of the trade name of the common name, the generic class of the category has and some of the physical properties of the substance, including its boiling point, melting point, flashing point, specific gravity, vapor density, stability, and water vapor pressure at 20 degrees Celsius, have the health of environmental pose and substance, including physical hazards such as the explosion, potential acute and chronic health hazards, potential route to the human exposure to the substance facility establishment, place in the property being investigated and entered for the inspector the owner subsection location for the disposal of the any waste of the stream, the monitoring data, the analysis of the monitoring data pertaining to the disposal activity, any hydrological, geological data, groundwater monitoring data, and award the contract with any of the person gave the response of the president of the state, then gave the awarding with the contract with the presumed the contractor and in subsection D of this section to require with the compliance of the federal health and safety standard of the establishment under section 301 F of the act of the regular subcontractor to action condition of such contracts. All labor the mechanicals employed with the contractor subcontractor to perform the construction repair the alteration more work found with a whole within part within under this section with the 128A1B23 shall be paid with the wages at a rate not less than the prevailing project with the character similar located with the determine the Secretary of Labor and Corn with the division Davis Beacon Act with the President shall not approve of such fundings which first obtain the adequate resume for the required labor stand with the will may be determined under the construction with the Secretary of Labor shall have the respective labor to stand with the paragraph the one with the authority function of the found set forth on reorganization plan number 14, 1915, and Section 2276C of Title 40 United States Code. Notwithstanding with the other provision of the subject of the provision in Section 111 of the Act, the President may authorize the use of the emergency procurement the purpose of the deemed necessary for the effect for the purpose of the Act, the use of determination, so for the procedure necessary for the President shall probably give the regulation prescribed by the superintendent general with which such authority shall be used. The procedure for the governor and such for the authority thereby is hereby established the public health and for the agency known for the agency the toxic substance of the disease registry shall report directly to the Surgeon General of the United States with the administrator said that the agency shall cooperate with the administrator of the environmental protection agency, the consumer of the food and drug administrator for the director of the National Institute of the National Institute of Environmental Health Science and the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, the Center of the Disease Control Prevention Administrator of the Occupational Health Administrator of the Administrative of Social Security Administration, Secretary of Transportation, appropriate for state and local health official with the effect of the implement with the health-related authorities Act in addition with the administration shall, in cooperation state, establish and maintain the National Registry of Serious Disease with the illness of the nation of the National Registry of the person exposed to the toxic substance, establish and maintain the inventory literature of the research of the site of the health effect for the toxic substance in cooperation with the with the other agencies of the federal government, establish and maintain a complete listing of the area of the COVID in the public, otherwise restricted and because the use of the public of the toxic substance contamination. In case of the public health emergency caused by the belief that could be caused by the exposure to the toxic substance, provide the medical care testing and exposure the individuals, including but not limited to tissue sampling and the chromosomal testing, which are appropriate with the epidemiological studies and any other assistance with the appropriate circumstance, either independently part of the health staff of the conducting periodic survey with the screening program to determine the relationship of the exposure of the toxic substance and illness and keep the public health over the emergencies exposed with the person eligible to admission hospital with the other facility services operated provided with the public health service. And within 6 months of the enactment, Superfund Amendment, the Reauthorization Act of 19 the Administrator of the Agency Toxic Substance Disease Registry of the Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency shall prepare a list and order priorities of 100 of the hazardous substances which are most likely commonly found on the facility with the national priority list, which are in sole discretion of the determined the posing of the most significant potential threat for the health of the unknown suspected toxicity of the humans with the potential human exposure to the substances facility, the national priority list facility will respond to the relief of the threat and relief under this section under this consideration. Within 24 months of the enactment, the Superfund Amendment, the Reauthorization Act 1986, Administrator of the Agency of Toxic Substance Disease Registry, Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency shall review the revised, listed, and prepared under paragraph A with such revisions shall include in order to provide or in addition 100 more such as substances each of the 3 consecutive 12 months period of the file of the Administrator of the ATSDR and Administrator of the EPA with review of the same manner with providing 2 preceding sentences such as including not fewer than 25 additional hazardous substance per revision. Administrator the agency Texas Substance Disease Registry and Administrator of the EPA shall not less than other than 1 year thereafter the revised such a list including the hazardous substance and with the criteria in subparagraph A. Based on all available information, including the information maintained in the paragraph 1B with the demonstrated value of the collective of the health effects of the hazardous substance under the paragraph of the Administrator of the ATSDR shall prepare the toxicological profile of the substance listed in paragraph 2 with the toxicological profile shall be prepared in accordance with the guideline with the developed the Administrator of the ATSDR and the Administrator of the EPA. Such profiles should include but not limited to each of the following: examination, summary, interpretation, availability, toxicological information, epidemiological evaluations, hazardous substance in order, exertion of the level of significant human exposure to the substance within associated with this acute, subacute, with chronic health activities. Determination whether the adequate information health of the activities, substance within involved the progress of the development, the determined level of exposure of the present, the significant risk of the human health of acute and subacute chronic health effects. Appropriate identification, toxicological need to identify the type of level of the exposure may present a significant risk of the reverse health effects in humans. Any toxicological profile revision thereof reflect the Administrator of the Agency of Toxicological Substance and Disease Registry with the assessment of the relevant toxicological testing whether it has been by peer review. The profiles required by the prepared on the paragraph of the hazardous substance listed in paragraph A and paragraph 2 shall be completed with a rate of not less than 25 per year with the 4 year with the enactment of the Superfund Amendment Reauthorization Act 1986. A profile required with the substance listed in paragraph B with the paragraph 2 with the shall be completed within 3 years. Additional list of the profiles provided within the paragraph shall be then those substance list type of the list of priorities with the paragraph 2 with the profile of the not previously have been provided with the profiles required with the paragraph shall be revived and republished in the necessary not less than once every 3 years. Every 3 years, profiles should be provided with the state and made available for the interested party. The Administrator of the ATSDR will provide the consultation when the upon the request of the health issue of the related and exposure to have the toxic substance base for the available information. Administrator of the EPA with the state official, local official. Stuff the consolation individuals must provide the state and under cooperative agreement is established under the Act for each hazardous substance list under the pursuing the paragraph 2 of the Administrator of the ATSD over the consolation of the Administrator of the EPA with the other agency programs. The published health service shall assess the adequate information on health effects of the substances available for each of the substances for the adequate information not available under the development of the Administrator of the ATSD over the cooperation with the Director of the National Toxicological Program shall show the initiation program of the research of the designated with the determined health effect for the technique for the development method determining the stuff for the health effect substance feasible of such for the program seek for the development methods of the determined health effect for the substance combination substances with a commonly found with the before assuring initiation and stuff for the program administrator of the ATSDR considering recommendation of the interagency testing committee with the established under section 4E of the Toxic Substance Control Act with the type of the research shall be done. Such program should include the extent of the necessary substance mental existing information not limited to laboratory other study of determining short of the intermediate long-term health effects, laboratory other study of determining organ, specifically the size, specifically the system, specifically acute chronic toxicity, laboratory other study of determining the manner with which substance of the metabolized the otherwise developed understanding of the biokinetics in each of the substances, whether the possibility of obtaining human data with collection such information assessing with the need of the performing laboratory other studies requirements of paragraph A of the Administrator ATSDR require shall be considered and available with the quality existing testing of the data concerning the substance of the subject, the health effect of the question, and to the extent of the testing already progress will in time fashion provide the data with adequate support to the preparation of the toxicological profile with the requirement of paragraph F3 with the and such other scientific and technical factors for the Administrator of the ATSDR may determine the necessary for the effect of the implementation subject. In the development of the implementation and research of the program, the paragraph of the Administrator of the ATSD over the Administrator of the EPA, the coordinator of the research program that implemented with the paragraph of the National Toxicological Program, toxicological testing established under Toxic Substance Control Act with the federal insecticide, fungicide, rodent act for the purpose of the such coordination shall be avoid duplication of the effort to ensure that it has something pursuant to this subsection tested throughout the earliest practical day with appropriate with consistent with such purpose the research program of the program may be carried out with such programs of the under toxicological testing in the scene of the Congress for the cost of the research of the program paragraph of the born and manufacture of the programs process that has jumped in question with the requirement of the program the toxicological testing of the toxic substance control of the Act 1 year after enactment, Superfund Amendment of the Reauthorization Act 1986. Minister of the EPA shall promulgate the regulation with the appropriate with the payment with the certificate of the manufacturer processor with the Tax and Substance Control Act with the registrants under the federal insecticide, fungicide, rodent and recovery of the certificate cover for responsible parts of the act. Minister of the ATSD over the perform health assessment of each facility national priority list establishing under Section 105 of the health assessment shall be completed within no later than December 10th, 1988. Each of the facility proposed with inclusion list of the day with the priority enactment of the Superfund Amendment of the Reauthorization Act 1986, or not later than 1 year with the day with the proposal inclusion of the list of each facility proposed inclusion of such later list after the day of the enactment. An administrator of the ATSD over the performance health assessment and relief of the facility and the individual person, life and physician, provided the information individuals have been exposed to the hazards of the probable sources of the exposure for the relief. Additionally, the other method form inform the providing source of the information such that the individual person, liable licensed physician, might be such of the submitted a petition with the administrator of the ATSD over the providing such information requiring the health assessment evidence such for the petition submitted with the administrator of the ATSD over the not initiate the health assessment, the administrator of the ATSDR shall provide the written explanation for the health assessment is not appropriate. In determine the priority of the conducting health assessment in subsection, the administrator of the ATSDR or consultation of the administrator APA shall give the priority of the facility which of their document evidence of the relief of the hazard substance of which of the potential risk of the human health of the appear of the high of the which of the judgment of the administrator ATSDR existing health existence data and adequate to access to the potential risk of human health of the provided the subparagraph of the determined priority for the conducting health assessment on the subsection, administrator of the ATSD of the consider the national priority list schedule with the need of the environmental protection agency, federal agencies, pursuant to the schedule of the remedial investigation and feasible studies with health and assessment done with the site of the national priority list for the administrator of the ATSDR shall complete with the site of the assessment promptly with the some of the extent practical or the completion of the remedial investigation feasible study of the facility is concerned. Any state of the public health subdivision carrying out the health assessment the facility shall report the result of the assessment of the administrator of the ATSD over the administrator of the EPA, then shall include the recommendation with respect to further activation activity if needed with the carried out. But the section administrator of the ATSD shall state the recommendation of the aim of the report result of the assessment carried out only direct with the administrator of the ATSD over the facility shall include the periodic reports with included result of the assessment carried out under the subsection for the purpose of the subsection section 11 C before. Determine the health assessment should include primarily the assessment of the potential risk of human health of the individual site and the facility should for the factors for the extent of the contamination, extent of the potential pathways, human exposure, including the ground, surface water with the contamination, air emission, food chain contamination, inside of the potential susceptibility, community with likely pathways exposure for the comparison, expect the human health effect for the short-term, long-term health effect for the associated with the individual hazards, something available to recommend exposure, tolerance, limits, and such that hazards, something in comparison with existing morbidity. Mortality data of the disease may be associated with the observed level of exposure administered by the ATSD with appropriate data of the risk assessment, risk evaluation studies available to the administrator of the EPA. The purpose of the health assessment of the subsection shall be specifically determined with the action with the level of the subsection should be taken to reduce the human exposure, have the substance facility with the additional information of the human exposure, associated health risks, needed shall be acquired with the conducting an epidemiological study of the paragraph 7 establishing registry. Paragraph 8, establishing health surveillance program, and paragraph 9, or throughout the other means, and use the risk of the health assessment with determined additional action is taken under the section administered the ATA may consider additional information the risk of potential effect of the pollutant and for all sources of the such hazardous substance including known point and non-point sources of the other than have the facility in question. And completion of the health assessment administered the ATSD or the EPA with the with the result of the assessment, together with the recommendation for the action with the subsection, otherwise the action additional health assessment and indicate with the relief and threat and relief concerned by many people with the threat of the human health environmental administrator of the ATSDR shall notify the administrator of the EPA who shall promptly evaluate the the relief of the threat and relief of the corn for the hazards ranking system referred to the section 105A 105A8A. Determine whether the site shall be play for the national priority list for the site of those already enlisted for the administrator for the ATSD over the remain recommended with the administrator of the EPA shall be informed for the higher priority. Whenever the judgment administrator for the ATSD is appropriate with the basis for the result of the human assessment of the administrator of the ATSD shall conduct a pilot study of the human effect of the selected group of the individuals in order to determine the desirability of conducting full-scale epidemiological other health study of the entire exposed population. Whenever the judgment of the administrator of the ATSDR over the appropriate of the base for the result of the such pilot study of the other study of the health assessment of the administrator of the ATSDR should conduct a full-scale epidemiological other health study that may be necessary to determine the health effects of the population exposed to the air substance of the release of the threat and relief of the significant with except for the disease, the pollution, identified with the letter of the transmittal, such for the study include the assessment of the risk factors of the release that may include the judgment of the peer review group be associated with such relief of the risk factor but not taken into account with the design of the conduct of the study. Indicate for the result of the health assessment of the indicate for the potential significant risk of the human health administrator of the ATSDR shall contribute to the establishment of the registry of the exposure of the person shall contribute to the disclosure for the purpose of the subject and taking account of the circumstance of the bearing with the usefulness of the such registry, including with the serious and unique character to identify the disease, the likelihood of the population migration affected area. Alright, 9. Whenever the administrator ATSDR of the determined that there is a significant increase of the risk of the virus or the effect for the human for the exposure of the hazard substance based on the result of the human assessment conducted in paragraph 6 of the epidemiological study conducted in paragraph 7, the exposure of the registry of the established in paragraph 8, and the administrator of the ATSDR over the determinant of the exposure of the result of the relief of the facility of the ATSDR, administrator of the ATSDR shall initiate the health surveillance program of such population. The program shall include, but not limited to, a periodic medical testing with appropriate for the population subgroup that was screened for the disease of the which of the population subgroup group with a significant increase of the reach, the purpose of the referral of the treatment of the individuals for the population increase who are screened positive of the disease. 2 years after the date of the enactment of the Superfund Amendment of the Reauthorization Act 1986, every 2 years thereafter, the administrator of the ATSDR shall prepare and submit with the EPA and to the Congress report result of the activity of the ATSDR, the human health assessment of the pilot health effects of the sentence of the conduct of the epidemiological studies conducted the hazard substances which have them lifted under paragraph 2 of the toxicological profile of the which have develop the toxicological testing which has been conducted, which is being conducted under the section and registry of the establishment paragraph 8 with the overall assessment of the base and the result of the activity conducted for the administrator of the ATSDR linkage between the human exposure and individual combination of hazardous substance due to release of the facilities covered in this act of solid waste disposal act with any of the increase of the incidents surveillance of the adverse health effect for the health assessment of the study carried out in the subsection finding with the exposure of the concern of the presence of the significant risk of the human health of the president shall take such steps as being necessary to reduce the exposure or the limitation of the substantial mitigate of the significant risk of the human health of such steps may include but the use of any of the authority of the act including but not limited to provision alternative water supply of permanent temporary relocation of individuals and capable information for insufficient judgment of the administrator ACSDR. The president determined the significant significant human exposure level with respect to the hazards of the president may take the steps to be necessary to reduce the exposure of any of the person who has a substance to such a level the president deemed necessary to protect the human any of the case of the which with the subject of the petition human assessment of the scope of the research program of the subsection nothing of the subsection with the true of the do lay otherwise with the effect of the impact of the authority of the president minister of the ATSDR with the minister of the EPA with the authority of the investor in the president of the minister of the ATSDR with the minister of the EPA under the provision including but limited not limited with the eminent have the authority of the section 703 with the solid waste disposal the responsibility abatement authorities for the act for the all state with the result of the research conducted under the subsection other than the health assessment shall be reported and adopted the appropriate peer review shall be complete with the maximum extent of the practical the peer within 60 days within case of the research conducted with the national and toxicological program such the peer review shall be conducted by the board of the scientific consultant within case of the other research or the peer review shall be conducted by a panel with consisting not less than 3 or more than 7 members of the shall be disinterested scientific experts selected for such purpose administrator of the ATSD over the or the Ministry of the EPA, appropriate for the base of the repetition of the scientific object with the like of the institutional ties with the person involved with the conduct with the study with the research with the review of the support services with the such panels will be wherever the agency taxes substance for the disease registry environmental protection agency is appropriate. Implementation subsection of the health related authority for the Ministry of the ATS over the shall have assembled develop the necessary for the distributed of the state of the upon record of the medical college of physicians or the professional with the appropriate educational material including short course of the medical surveillance, screening method of the diagnosis and treatment of injury, disease, the related exposure, has something given them prior to the list of the paragraph 2 with the such from the name of the ATSDR deemed appropriate. Are the activities administered by the ATSDR described in the subsection 111 C4 with the carried out with the Ministry of the ATSDR either directly through the cooperative agreement of the state with the other political subdivision of the Ministry of the ATF to determine the capable of carrying out with the activity include the provision, consolation, health, information with the health assessment, including required within paragraph 3019 B of the solid waste disposal act, health study for the register for the health surveillance of the president shall provide adequate personnel with the ATSDR, but shall not provide fewer than 10 or 100 employees for purpose of determining the need of the employee over the subsection employee with the employed with the ASTSDR with the part-time care with the employment of the basis shall be conducted with the fraction determined dividing 40 hours of the average number of the hours such employee regulatory scheduled work week. In accordance with the section 120 relating to the federal facility administrator of the ATSD have the same authority under the section respectful of the facility of the owner and operative of the department and agency of the instrumental of the United States administrator of the ACSDR with respect to the non-governmental entities. If the administrator of the ATSDR with the determined grants for the appropriate purposes for the section with dry treat the pollutant with the contamination with the heads of the pollutant substance. The pollutant and contaminant shall be treated with the heads substance for each of the purposes of the acquisition property. Authority of the President is authorized to require the purchase of leave with the damage with the domination with the otherwise relieve the priority with the entry for the real property of the President within discretion to determine the need to conduct the remedial action. Under this act, there is no compel the action with the compel with the President to acquire the entry for the real property under this act. With the side assurance with the President with the authority with the paragraph 1 over the remedial action only if in the entry of the real estate with the required within the subsection with the state with the entry to be acquired and located assured that the President shall contract with the cooperative agreement and otherwise state with the except for the transfer and entry for the following completion of the remedial action. No federal, state, or local government shall be liable under the act the result of the acquiring entry for the real estate under this section. Brownfields revitalization funding, defining the eligible entity with the subject of the eligible entity mean for the general purpose of the local government, leading clearance of authority of the quasi-governmental entity with the operative with the supervision with the control of the as an agent, general purpose of the local government, the government entity created with the state and legislative regional council with the group of the general purpose of the local government, redevelopment agency, charter of the otherwise sanctioned state with a state with an individual tribe of the or other than Alaska National Native Regional Cooperation of the Alaska Native Village Corporation as termed with the Defiance Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act and the Metatolikia Indian Community Organization described in 501c3 with the Internal Revenue Code 1986 and accepted taxation of Section 1501A of this code. Limited Liability Corporation with the managing member of the organization described in subparagraph 1I of the liability corporation, except for the sole member of the organization described in subparagraph 5K. Limited partnership with the general partners organization described in paragraph 1 subparagraph I, limited with the liability corporation, sole member of the organization described in subparagraph I. The qualified committee to describe development entity with described in section 45 DC1 with the Internal Revenue Code 1986 with the Brownfield Site Characterization Assessment Grant Program establishment of the program and the submission of the shall establish the program to provide grants inventory, categorize the access of the conduct of the planning of relate with the Brownfield Site within subparagraph B. The performance of the targeted site assessment of the Brownfield Associate state with the assistant of the site with the characterization assessment of the general approve of the application for the eligible entity with the administrator of the payment with make the grade and eligible entity with the use of the program with the inventory characterized except for the conduct planning and relay with one or more of the Brownfield site. Site characterization assessment carried out with the use of the grant on the under the club shall be performed in accordance with section 101.35b. Exemption in certain public owned with the Brownfield site with the notwithstanding the 5b3 with the eligible entity with the description in the paragraph A through H in the paragraph 1 may be the receipt of the grant under the paragraph of the property required eligible entity prior to January 11th, 2002 with the even with the eligible entity with the described and qualified bona fide prospective purchase of the such legal entity that is not covered the contributed true relief and threatened relief that has substance of the property. Grant and loans of the Brownfield remediation grants provided by the President subject to the paragraph 5 and 6 of the President shall establish the program to provide grants to the eligible entity with the use of the capitalization revolving local funds. The eligible entities nonprofit organization wanted to determine if the President based on the conservative on paragraph C with the usually directed remediation one or more of the Brownfield site with the organization receive the grant within by the amount that exceeds $500,000 of each site with the remedial until limit of the most waive of the administrative of the next with a total of $650,000 for each of the based on the anticipated level of contamination site ownership and status of the site. Loans and grants provided by the eligible entity receive the grant under the paragraph A1 of the shall use the grant funds of the assistance for the remediation Brownfield site of the form. One or more loans for the eligible entity with the site of the owner of the site developer any of their person, one or more of the grants eligible entity with non-profit organization warranted to determine the eligible entity provide with the assistance based on the consideration of paragraph C with the remedial site owned by the eligible entity non-profit organization receive the grant consideration determining whether the grant under paragraph A2 and the B2 with the warranty of the President eligible entity in the case that shall be taken into consideration extent with the grant facility the creation of the preservation additional to the park with the greenway, undeveloped property, recreational, and property with the other property with non-property, perfect the consent to which the grant will meet with the needs of the community with the ability of the development or the sort of the flooding environmental remedial subsequent level of redevelopment over the area of which Brownfield site located because of the small of the population, local income of the community, extent with which of the grant facility with the reuse of the existing reuse and reuse of the existing infrastructure benefit of promoting the long-term availability funds of the revolving loan and fund of the Brownfield remediation such similar fact with the administration for the appropriate conservation purposes of the subsection transition revolving loans found in the inhabitants established of the day of the enactment of the section may be used with the accordance with the paragraph exemption of the certain public owned with the Brownfield site with the notwithstanding paragraph 5b3 with the eligible entity prescribed in subparagraphs A through H for the paragraph 1 may receive the grant and loan with the paragraph of the property acquired with the eligible prior to January 11th, 2002, even if the eligible entity doesn't qualify bona fide prospective purchaser long of the eligible entity was not considered cause or contributed to the threat and relief that has substance of the property. Multi-purpose Brownfield grants. Alright, in purpose, in general, the substance of the paragraph, the subparagraph is provided in 6 of the administration of the program and the provide the multi-purpose grants eligible any based on the criteria in subparagraph C, consideration on paragraph 3C with the carry out of the inventory of the characterization assessment planning of the remediation activities one or more of the brownfield sites area with the proposed eligible at any grant amounts. Individual grant amounts each of the grant award with under the paragraph should not exceed $1 million. Cumulative with the grant amounts down to the amount of the grants award each fiscal year. The grants are not exceed 15% of the fund but made available the fiscal year to carry out the subsection. Criteria with an award with granting under the paragraph of the administrator shall consider the extent of the eligible entities available to provide overall plan with the revitalization one of the brownfield site of the property area with the multi-purpose grant will be used to demonstrate the capacity for the conduct of the range of eligible activity with the fund with the multi-purpose grant to demonstrate the multi-purpose grant with the need with one or more of the brownfield site for the proposed action considers a condition. A condition received with the grant with the under the paragraph of the eligible entity to extend fully amount of the grant no later than date with the 5 years after the date with which the grant is awarded with the eligible entity with the administrator to provide for the extension ownership of the eligible entity with the receipt of the grant under paragraph of the not spend any of these grants funded with the remediation brownfield site within the eligible any with the brownfield site. General provisions, maximum grant amount. Brownfield's characterization assessment. In general, the grant under paragraph 2 may be awarded to eligible any with the community wide the site basis that shall not exceed the grant for any individual brownfield site and then grant more than $200,000. Your waiver, the administrator may waive the $200,000 limitation, subclause 1 of the permit of the brownfield site. The receipt of the grant not more than $350,000 based on the anticipated level of contamination of the staff of the ownership and site. Brownfields remediation. The grant under the paragraph 3A1 may be awarded eligible at any of the community-wide site-by-site is based not exceeding $1 million per eligible grant. The administrator may make an additional grant for the eligible at any of the described of the previous assignment within any of the year after the initial grant made to take and consideration number of the site, number of the communities that may draft the revolving loan fund, demand of the funding with eligible entities have not previously received the grant under the subsection of the demonstrated ability eligible entity with the receive the revolving loan under the enhance the remediation provided funds of the basis of the such as other similar factors administered with the conservative appropriate to carry out of the subsection of the prohibition. No part of the grant under the subsection may be used with the payment of the penalty of the fine, federal costs, the sheer requirement, response cost of the brownfield site, which is the recipient grant load has potentially liability under section 107. Or a cost complying with the federal law, with including the federal law specified in 101.39b, with exceed the cost of the compliance with the law, with the applicable to clean up the assistance with the development of the local government site with remediation programs. A local government that received the grant under subsection D may not exceed 10% of the grant fund to develop the implementation brownfield program that may include the monitoring health of the population exposed with one or more hazardous substance for the brownfield site, with the monitoring with enforcement, any with the institutional control, the use over the prevent the human exposure and he has the substance in brownfield. Ensure with the recipient of the grant loan award with paragraphs 2, 3, and 4 with the performance of the characteristic assessment remediation of the brownfield site with the use of the portion of the grant loan with the purchase of the insurance for the characteristic assessment remediation of the site. Administrative costs. In general, the eligible entity may even the 5% of the amount of the made available under the grant loan under subsection administrative of the cost of the restriction for the purpose of the cost of the administrative of the cost does not include the investigation and identification of the extent of the contamination of the brownfield site. 2. The design of the performance of the response to action. 3. The monitoring of the natural resource, the grant applications. Mission in general, the application for the engine eligible at any of this the submitted by the administrator of the regional office of environmental protection agency within such a form administrator may record the application of the grant under the subsection for the more with one brownfield site, including the information on the criteria of the administrator of the rank of the application for the paragraph C with the extent of the information is available. The NCP with the administrator of the include the requirements of the submission of the application under the subclause of the requirements of the national contingency plan with only to the extent of the requirement is relevant and appropriate with the program under this section. Coordinate for the administrator shall coordinate with the federal agencies specifically making eligible any with aware of the available funds and federal resource with the guidance of the administrator shall publish the guidance to establish the eligible any with the plan with the grants under the section. Approval of the administrator shall at least annually complete with the review of the application of the grant received the eligible any of the subsection award grant with the subsection eligible any of the administrator determines the have the ranking with the ranking criteria the establishment of paragraph C. Criteria of the administrator shall have the established from the ranking granting application received them in paragraph with include the following criteria with the extent of which for the grant with the similar with the availability of the other fund for the environmental assessment remediation subsequent review in the area with the which are the one or more of the brownfield site with located with the potential for the proposed project with the developed plan for an area with the which one or more of the brownfields located with the simulate with the economic development of the area completion of the cleanup of the exam of the grant will address the facility identification reduction of the threat human health environmental include the threats areas of which are greater than the normal incidence of a disease condition, include the cancer and the asthma, birth defects, and may be associated with the exposure to health hazardous substance pollutants and contaminations. The action of the which of the grant with the facility be used and use the existing infrastructure. Extent of which of the grant would facilitate the creating of the preservation addition with the park with the greenway, the undeveloped property of the recreation group, property of the property of used non-property. Further extent of the grant would be made with the need of the community. ability to draw with other short of the funding and environmental remediation, given the development in the area, which is the brownfield site was located with the makeup of a small population, low income of the community, the extent of the applicable the applicant with the fund with the other source of the extent with the grant with further fair distribution of the funding. Urban development, non-urban area. The extent of which of the grant provided the development and local community to profit of making a decision relating to clean up the future of the brownfield site. The extent of which of the grant would be driven the facility with the indemnification reduction threats of the health and welfare of the child, children, pregnant women, and minority of low-income communities, and other sensitive populations. Extent of such with the grass and address the site adjacent with the body with the water federal designated flood plain. Extent of which of the grant would facilitate the local location of the brownfield site facility generally renewable electrical, wind, and solar energy, geothermal energy, and any energy efficiency improvement project with the brownfield site, including the project with the combined heat with the power system of the district energy support system. Alright, report on ranking criteria no later than September 30th, 2022. The administrator shall submit to the Congress for the report regarding the administrative use of the ranking criteria. Described below paragraph C with the awarding grants on the selection. 7. Implementation brownfield program. The establishment of the program. Ensure the may provide funding eligible at any of the non-profit organization, private training, research, and technical assistance individual organization appropriate for the facility of the inventory brownfield site with the site assessment, remediation, brownfield site with community involvement, site preparation, running a restricted the total funding federal money with the administrator of the paragraph until not exceed 15% of the total money with the appropriated to carry out subsection of any fiscal year 8 audits. In general, the Inspector General of the Environmental Protection Agency will conduct with the recess for the reviews of the general grant loans under subsection. Inspector General will consider the necessary care of the subsection P and procedure and audit within the supervisor should consider the accordance with the audit procedure for the government general accounting officers of the chapter, including chapter 75 of the Title 31 United States Code violation. Ensure the determination of the person receiving the grant and loaded under the subjects of some subsection the violation condition of the grant loan and applicable federal law with the administrator may terminate the grant loan, require the person to repay the funds, receive the seeking any of the legal remedies available to the administrator, and then report to Congress no later than September 30th, 2020 with the Inspector General of the Environmental Protection Agency shall submit to the Congress a report with the provide with the description management of the program, include the description and allocation of the funds and subsection, leveraging any of the provider the receiver of the grant with the subject for the grant fund for the portion of the project for the brownfield site with the funding is received for the other short for the grant funds are either the only for the purpose of the defined section 2, 3, and 4. Grant 10 agreements, grant and loan with the made under the subsection with include the requirement of the national contingency plan only the extent of the requirement of the relevant and appropriate of the program and then subsection determined the administrator by the may be subject of the agreement about that require with the receiver that comply with the applicable federal state law of the insurer to clean up with the protect for the human health of the environment require the recipient of the grant with the load exclusively purposes specified in section 2 of this applicable, then keep the application eligible to any of the paragraph 3A with the requirement eligible to any to pay the matching share of the which made with the form of the contribution labor the material with the services at least 20% of the non-federal sort of the funding and left the administrator determined the matching share of the play for the undue hardship of them the eligible any of the contained with the other term of the condition of the administrator determined to be necessary for the carry out of the subsection. Or facility other than brownfield site with the fact of the facility that may not be brownfield site with the meaning of the section 10139A has no effect with the eligibility of the facility for the assistance under the name of the provision of federal law. Effect of the federal law, notwithstanding the subsection effect of the liability response authority aim of the federal law, including the last sentence in section 10114 Solid Waste Disposal Act and Federal Water Pollutant Control Act, Toxic Substance Control Act, Safety Water Drinking Water Act, and authorization of this authorization appropriated associated to carry out subsection $200 million for each fiscal year of 2019 through 2023. In your National Contingency Plan. I'm not sure if I read this one yet.